All right, great. And let me share my screen as well. All right, great. So welcome everyone to the third hacking session for the data event board. What we're going to be working on today is we're going to try to set up a Codespaces for the repos that we've been working on. I know folks have been having trouble with setting up both of the repositories, and I think that Codespaces might be a good solution for us. So we're going to try our hand at it today, and we're probably going to be working as a group in order to do so. I am told that it's easy. I'm not entirely sure how easy it's going to be in terms of the actual customization of our repo. So we're all going to be in the docs a lot today, and hopefully working together as a team to figure this out. So any questions before we start? I did drop a couple of resources in the chat, so just make sure that you have that open. But with that, let's just pull up the docs themselves. For GitHub codes. Oh, I thought I heard.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So like, GitHub Codespaces can be used to edit your code in the cloud and all that, one at a time. So we have two different, repos, one for API, one for front end. How we are gonna connect, those two different Codespaces?
You are muted.
You are on mute.
All right, thanks, guys. So I think that that's part of what we're going to be experimenting with today, because ideally those two repos work together on their own when we're spinning them up in our dev environment. So we're going to see if we could replicate the same thing with a code space. So do we have to connect them? I'm not entirely sure that we do. So let's, we'll come to that question when we'll sort of cross that bridge when we come to it. So let's get this up and spinning and see if it requires any work beyond that. I have gone through the docs a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure about the complexity of this. It might be super simple from what I heard it is, but we'll know more once we go through it. But that's a good question, Raj, because that's something we need to be thinking about. The other thing that I think that we might be a bit of a challenge for us is setting up the admin function. So we will go through and just see what happens. So with that, let's just open up the quick start guide. And actually, do I have the quick start guide up? I'm just going to do a real quick search for it. So just reading through this to see if there's any prereqs that we have to do to enable Codespaces. It looks like we will just have to ensure that whoever is spinning it up has read access to the repository and write access, which is pretty simple. I think we all have that.
Yeah, so I have worked with Codespaces in one of my projects as LFX mentee. So there we just fork the project and go to the setting and spin up the Codespaces, and it works pretty well.
Okay. All right, let's try that. So so if we go to Data Umbrella, for example, we go to our repos. Actually, I just went by it. We go to, for example, the front end repo.
Fork it.
And then from here, Is it the individual user that spins up? Oh, no, here it is, Codespaces.
Yeah.
So create Codespaces on main, which is what we want to do. So let's see if that will spin up. I wonder if we can set this on dark mode. Wow, that's spinning up. So that looks like it's spun up pretty okay. And is it npm run dev that we're doing? Oops. Guess I hadn't finished. So it looks like we're just doing an npm install. While that's spinning up, I'm just going to pull up the docs. Just so we have them handy if we need them. Okay, great. So it looks like it might be ready to actually take a command. So let's try. I don't know why there's a duplicate line down here. If that's going to affect anything, but let's try npm. Let's try npm run start dev first. And if that doesn't work, we can try npm start. Oh, wow, that's fine. Okay, it looks like it's running, potentially.
Yeah, it's like very great thing where you can have like whole development thing on the cloud, and it does everything for you. You just have to just open the link whenever you want to work on it.
Right, and there's no setup required. Yeah.
Yeah, it does everything for you.
Yeah, which is amazing. The thing that we're testing for and looking for today is to make sure that if somebody spins up a code space, that there's no level of customization that we need to do in order for them to actually be able to test it appropriately. That's sort of the objective for today. So you can see right now, I've spun it, as Raj was saying, I've been able to spin up a code spaces relatively quickly. The one thing that I do notice is that it's not coming up with any sort of search results. Generally, there's some dummy data down here and it's not appearing. So I don't know if that's an indication of something or not, but let's move on to the other repo and see if we can get that spun up as well. Any thoughts before we go forward? Okay, so same deal. I'm just going to click on the link. I'm going to go over to this code button and click on the drop down and then simply just click on the green button that says create code spaces on main, and we will see what we come up with. And this one right now is the one that I think has a little bit of complexity. Raj, when you were working with this before, did you were you working on this like it in tandem with Docker or some other application that's similar?
Like me.
Yeah, when you tested this.
So the Codespaces thing, like I was running a backend for one of projects. It was like the project itself was in Dockerized environment, and it was in a mono repo. It didn't have like multiple repos.
Okay. And so that looks like it's ready to take a command. So again, I'm just going to go in here and run the commands I normally would. I don't know if we have to start from the beginning or not. I'm assuming that we don't. So I'm just going to hit Docker Compose up. I already have Docker open. While that's running, we can take a look at some of the documentation just to see if there's anything here that's relevant that we need to take a look at.
I think it will connect automatically if we create a mono repo for backend and frontend. Put both of these things in the same repo with and run it with Docker Compose or something like that.
Okay.
But right now, both of the Codespaces are running on two different machines, so I don't know how we are gonna connect two different machines.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's got to be a workaround, because this is not the only project that has it's not a mono repo, right? There's not the only project that is separate front end and back end. So I'm sure there's something in the docs that probably addresses this or somewhere. if not in the GitHub docs themselves. So I think that that's something that we could probably do it as a team if people can either open up the Codespaces documentation or do a search right now. And let's just take 5 minutes to do that and reconvene at 25 past the hour.
Yep.
That sound good?
Mhm.
All right, so I will see you guys in a few. Okay, so we're at 25 past the hour. If y'all are still searching, come back to the main room, please, and then let's talk about what we found. Give me a raised hand emoji if you're here. Raj is here. Just waiting on Kyrie and Emma. Kai's here. We'll just wait for Emma. Okay. All right, so we had about 5 minutes to do a little bit of research. It might not have been quite enough time. I can tell you right off the bat. So I found that other people have had this problem. We're not the only we're not the only people. And I do believe that there is a solution, but I have not found good documentation for how explicitly how to do this. Has anyone else found anything that they might think is useful that will give us maybe step-by-step instructions? If not, we can always take a little bit more time to do some research. I'm guessing from the silence, yeah, that you haven't found anything yet. Yeah, cool. So I think, but so at the very least, can we agree that this is something that we can resolve? So is it possible to have two repos and connect them in Codespaces? What I read so far, it says that it's in the affirmative that we can. I just haven't figured out how to do it. But has anyone read anything to the contrary? I'd like to know that will solve our case. Yeah. So Raj is saying hasn't found anything that will solve our case, and Kyrie says hasn't found anything explicit in terms of instructions. But even before we go to that, as we continue searching down this route, because Raj brought up a solution as well, is that we could combine these two things into a mono repo. But before we do that, let's just explore this avenue and see if this is something that we want to move forward with or not. So just like as a group, do you guys think that, is it something that you think that we can do, like potentially from what you read? Is it something that we can solve, or do you not have enough information yet?
I think we can solve it. It just might take more time to figure everything out, but yeah.
Yeah, agree. Roger's saying you don't have enough info. So let's take another break and do a little bit more research. What would be a good amount of time? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? What do you think?
I think 10 minutes is good.
All right, let's take another 10 minutes. I'm going to pause the recording right now. Yep, Emma's saying the same thing, maybe 10. All right, cool. So we're all on the same page. I will see y'all back here in 10 minutes and we'll talk about it. See ya. All right, so we're back. We had a few minutes to research. Any like insights that you guys had right away? Did we find anything to support the theory that this is a problem that can be solved in terms of utilizing Codespaces for two separate repositories? Yeah, so Kyrie's saying not yet, still kind of still in the weeds looking at it. I think that there is a solution somewhere in the documentation that I just dropped. So there is there's a link down here for managing multiple repositories for Codespaces. I think that we just need to get a little bit more familiar with it before we decide one way or the other, but I do definitely think that there's a solution out there for this. I think the other thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to share my screen just so we can take a look at the docs or the links together. And I'll just tell you guys what I'm thinking in terms of my thought process. I think that simply running this is not going to be enough for us. I think that we need to actually take a look at setting up dev containers within Codespaces. So this section right here, and I can drop a link to that into the chat as well for anyone who might need it. But we're going to have to take a look at the dev container configuration potentially and see if we need to do anything in there. Maybe take a look at what the default dev container configuration is versus personalizing it or customizing it. That's one of the things I think potentially that we might be able to take a look at. There's also this link to this article down here that I dropped that's talking about permissions to other repos. I don't know that that directly resolves our specific problem, but it's also something that we'll want to take a look at because, again, we've not done any of this work in here in terms of adding permissions. And actually, while we're here, we've got about 10 minutes left. You know what? I'm going to stop the recording right now, and then maybe we can think of a plan of action for kind of next steps and how we're going to do a little bit more research about this and test this out. So I'm going to stop my share right now, and I'm also going to stop the recording.